Okay, guys, let's get started. So good morning and welcome to Live from Curry Tech Extension. My name's Cameron Lowe, and I'm the County Extension Director here, which in that role, I just oversee the operations of North Carolina Cooperative Extension, Curry Tech County Center. And I also provide educational programming to help our community leaders and I give educational resources. And if you're not familiar with what Cooperative Extension is, let me just give you a real brief. North Carolina State University, NCDA, and our local county governments here in North Carolina. We're in all 100 counties in the state and on the Cherokee Reservation, and we're found throughout the United States of America as partnerships with land-grant universities. And what we actually do is we leverage the research that's conducted at the universities and in our research stations throughout the state, and we bring that research to our communities to help you improve the quality of your life. And primarily for us, we do that in the areas of agriculture, 4-H and youth development, foods and nutrition, and community and rural development. So that's just a little bit of who's who, what we do before we get started today. On today's episode of Live from Curry Tech Extension, we're going to look at time management for working at home, or as I like to call it, controlling the chaos. I don't know if you're like me, but here at Extension, we started a role. We're divided up into 3 teams, and each team will spend one day in the office and then teleworking some of those days, and we alternate that process. So this was my first week teleworking at all, and I thought, oh man, this is going to be great. I can work in my pajamas. I can manage my kids' school schedule. You know, we'll be so happy. I'll spend extra time with everybody, and it'll be wonderful. And then hit the brakes, and it was what I would lovingly refer to probably as controlled chaos. So I had a rude awakening this week, and I'm sure many of you did too. And some of you have been doing this for longer than just this 1 week. So today we want to try to give you some tips to control that chaos and get everything back together. Before we begin, I want to make sure and tell you, subscribe to the Curry Tech CES YouTube channel. Ring that bell up there at the top, and you'll get notifications anytime we go live. So just make sure you do that. If you have questions or comments, or if you've got tips to share with us during the class today, if you'll put those in the chat box, and I'll see those and try to moderate and answer some of those as we go throughout. If you're watching this, the recorded version of this, if you want to check the description, you'll see links to our social media and our website, and that's got our contact information. So if you have questions as you're watching the recorded version of this video, feel free to reach out to us in any of those ways, and we'll respond as quickly as we can. But anyway, let's get started. It has been a crazy week, y'all. And if you're anything like me, like I said, you thought it was going to be great and magical and unicorns, and part of it was. I really enjoyed having the opportunity to spend extra time with my kids and trying to help them through things, and spending some extra time with my husband. All that was wonderful. But then, of course, there was the sibling rivalry and the constant interruptions and the eating weird things and at all times of the day. And it was just kind of strange. And so I began to get a little stressed, and I thought maybe you did too. And so maybe we can talk through what we're going to look at is 10 strategies for managing your time effectively, or managing yourself in relationship to the time that you have available. And the reality about time is that we only have 24 hours a day, or 1,440 minutes, or 86,400 seconds. That's how much time we have every day. And how you use that time really depends on your self-awareness, your planning, your evaluation, and ultimately your self-discipline. If you think about time as money, 24 hours in a day, so $24. We spend about 8 of those, hopefully sleeping, maybe one less, maybe a couple less, maybe a couple more, but roughly around 8 sleeping. You probably spend 8 of those dollars working most of the time. Sometimes you'll add a few to that. You spend a couple of those hours, we got to eat and we've got to prepare the food. So usually we spend about a couple of those hours eating. Some of us primp more than others. And so we'll give an hour to grooming and those types of things. You're probably doing some driving, commuting back and forth, although that's changed. here recently, but let's say you spend an hour driving. And then hopefully you're taking care of yourself as well. So let's be real optimistic and give ourselves $1 for exercising. So after we've done all those things, which are things we do on a daily basis, we really only have $3 or 3 hours left of that discretionary time. And so if you think about it, time is a whole lot like money. It's limited, it's valuable, it has to be protected. We need to use it wisely, and I would even say we need to budget our time. And so that's what we're going to look at today. So we're going to jump in and take a look at our time management. So what happens when you don't practice good time management? Well, for one thing, we all know what happens when we're stressed. Our body actually reacts to that stress. Anytime we face an experience that's unpleasant or new or threatening, our body produces some sort of reaction. And time, especially this week, the way we manage our time and those types of things can produce some of those stress reactions. Too much stress can affect your mental health. It can affect your physical health. Over time, stress can harm your body. It can trigger things like allergies, gastrointestinal issues, muscle tensions, headache, heart issues, all kinds of things can be triggered by things. And let's be honest, we got enough stress in our lives right now. We don't need all that extra stuff because we're poorly managing time. So not only does it affect our body, but it also affects our performance, and that's at work or at home. You know, if you manage your time poorly, your productivity is reduced and your efficiency is reduced. And other people start to notice that, and that can lead to relationship issues. And that's not cool. We don't need that right now either. When people have trouble managing their time, they often become frustrated and disorganized and even short-tempered. I know that I got that way several times this week at home with my family, and that didn't do anything to improve relationships, but just a little planning and I could have avoided all of that. So whether you're a part of a family or a work team, when you're using your time poorly, things start to fall through the cracks and resentment begins to build. One thing I'd like to say is time management is really kind of a misnomer. We can't, time is what it is. We don't really manage our time. We manage ourselves in relationship to that time. And self-discipline is a really big part of that. So again, we're going to look at 10 strategies that are going to help us manage ourselves in relationship to the time that we have. 10 is a lot. And I don't necessarily like all 10 of these. They don't work for me. All 10 don't. Some of them do, some of them don't. So I'd encourage you to kind of ride along with me and just pick and choose the 10 that are most important or most effective for you. Hi, Sarah, you need your primping time? That's good. Me too. And I didn't have enough of it this morning. That was one of our comments in the chat box. So again, if you got questions or comments or tips as we go throughout, please put them in the chat box and I'll see them there. All right, so let's look at our strategies. Here we go. Strategy number 1, this one I do really like, and it is to be aware of how you spend your time. But simple awareness can really help us out a whole lot. And the crazy part is I would suggest to you to start by maintaining a time log. Yep, a time log. So writing down how you spend almost every minute of your day. It sounds ridiculous. It really does. But it'll help you notice some things like how long routine tasks take you, how many times you're interrupted, those types of things. It's not difficult. It's not one of those things that I would say, think back about your day and create a time log. I would advise you to keep the time log as you go throughout the day. Maybe write down what you're doing every time you switch a task. And it can be really illuminating. How long you keep the time log is up to you. Some people find one day a sufficient amount of time. Some people need a week of keeping a time log to see how patterns emerge. For me, I like to reinstitute my time log whenever I feel like my productivity needs a little bit of a bump, because it really makes me very aware of how I'm using my time, and I tend to be more responsive to that. I would say fight the urge to change your behavior as you're keeping your time log. So it's kind of like keeping a food journal when you're getting ready to start a diet. What you want is an accurate picture of how you're spending your time. So keep that time log. And then kind of look for patterns. Are there tasks that you can simplify or combine? What times of day are you most productive or least productive? Are you spending too much time on wheel spinning or routine tasks? So again, a time log can be a very effective method. All right, next strategy, set your priorities. And the key to prioritization is determining what's most important to you to help you meet your goal. This is to help your kids with if they're home with you too, as well. And here's a nice little illustration. So this jar, were it empty, would represent your schedule, your 24 hours of the day, right? The big rocks are the very, very important tasks, the key pieces. So the jar looks fairly full. I got one more big rock I'll put in there. So it's pretty doggone full of very important tasks. It doesn't look like we have a whole lot of extra time in our schedule. But, lo and behold, here comes a couple of emergency projects. And you know what? They're a little smaller, but I can fit them in there. But it sure looks like my jar is really full at this point. But then again, here comes some extra projects that maybe it's an interruption at home. Can I fit that in there? Well, yeah, I can. So my jar is not quite full yet. I can still fit that stuff in there. Oh, now it's getting full. And you know what? There's still times in my day where there are things that I want to do for me, and it looks really, really full, and they're not real important. But I just want to binge watch YouTube for a few minutes if I can. And you know what? I can fit that in there too. But the only way that I can fit all that into my day is if I have gotten my big things done first. I've scheduled my big things. I've committed my time to my priorities. If I put those in reverse order, the big, most important things would fall out of the jar, and I wouldn't have time to do that. So the moral of the story here is to make time for your big rocks. Make time for your most important things. And you can fit everything else around in between those most important things. So take some time, identify your priorities when you get started at home, and remember to review those things periodically and schedule those important items before your other day-to-day tasks. The next strategy is to use a planning tool. I'm a big fan of a planning tool. And by planning tool, maybe I mean calendar or planner. They're as numerous as the stars nearly, but you can be paper-based, you can be computer-based, cloud-based. My planning tool is cloud-based. I like to use Google Calendar and all its associated functions. Whatever form you use it consistently. So if you have committed to a paper-based calendar, then by golly, take that thing with you wherever you go and be consistent with that. Don't put scheduled items in more than one location. So a list of things, dates that you have to be, places and times over here, and your planning tool over here is not going to work out. As soon as you figure out an appointment that you have to make or a thing you have to complete, make sure you add that to your planning tool. Include prep time and follow-up time. I don't think about that quite so often, but if I've got to drive somewhere to do something, I need to have that time built in. So remember to do that. And then especially during this time, this uncertain time that we're in, give yourself a little grace. Give your kids a little grace. You are at home with them, perhaps. And so, don't schedule every minute of the day. You need that breathing room. It'll make you more effective in the long run. So commit to only scheduling about 70% of your day at most. And again, have a lot of grace with yourself. Probably one of the most common planning tools that people use is the to-do list. And I use a to-do list. Again, I use a cloud-based to-do list that works in conjunction with my Google Calendar. And one problem that I see a lot of people have, and that sometimes I have, is that we try to maintain multiple to-do lists. Maybe we lost one, can't find it, and so we put together another one, or maybe we ran out of space and we're running on to a next piece of paper. Avoid the urge to do that. Keep one to-do list and make sure you review it at the top of the day, every day, figure out what the most important tasks are. And then when you get to the end of the day, review it again. Things that didn't get complete, move them over to the next day and start again. So if you're using a to-do list, be effective with your to-do list if you've committed to that tool. All right, our next strategy, this one's fun, is to get organized. Now, one of the things that I thought is that, we've got more time at home. Everything in life has been canceled. This is typically the time when my family travels a lot, and all our trips have been suddenly canceled, rightfully so. And so I thought, well, we'll organize and remove clutter. It hasn't exactly gone that way yet, but I'm committing. We'll get there. I told my husband the pantry is the first thing I'm going to organize. But time management experts will tell you that we spend about 7 hours every week just looking for things or being distracted by clutter, which is crazy to me, but not unheard of for sure. So one method that we can use to remove clutter is called the keep, give away, toss method. So you ask yourself a 3-part question every time you come in contact with things. So as you're home, you run out to the mailbox, you come back, you've got your pile of junk mail and bills and cards, look at each piece and ask yourself the question, do I keep it? Do I give it to somebody else, or can I toss it? Deal with it right then and there instead of sticking it on the end of the counter or the dining room table and letting it pile up until it's a task that you really don't want to deal with. Once the clutter is gone, you can really develop a system that will help you deal with things as they come in much more effectively. Problem with that is that a lot of us are pack rats. We have a lot of excuses for the things that we have. So I started looking in my pantry yesterday, and one of the excuses is the I'll use it someday. And so here's my I'll use it someday cupcake maker that I bought for the kids. I'm never going to use this. I use my muffin tin. Or it's too good to throw away. I paid good money for this, cupcake maker. Another excuse is that, it'll be worth something one day. Remember the Beanie Babies? They'll be worth something one day. Yeah. Or it'll come back in style. I think character t-shirts went out in the 90s. I could probably let that go. Or it was a gift from my daughter. Now, if you're sentimental, some sentimental things are okay to keep. Some things can be taken a picture of, and you can toss it and store it digitally. So, you decide. Another common excuse, I paid good money for it, in the cupcake maker. Or as soon as I lose weight, I'll wear it. Yeah, I don't think that's happening. I'll buy something different. It'll be out of style by then. Or it just needs to be fixed. Here's a gem. This one just needs to be fixed because they don't make these anymore is another excuse, that use the 3.5 floppy disk. Or I'm saving it for, and in this case, it might be a museum. So lots of excuses. And if you find yourself described by any of those, then you probably need to take some action and get rid of some of the clutter so that you can stay focused and be organized and feel calm about your surroundings and be able to manage your time more effectively. The next thing I'd say is to schedule appropriately, strategy 5. And so this kind of comes back to your time log. So once you've figured out if you're a morning person or an evening person, then you've kind of figured out your rhythms. I know with my kids this week, I figured out real quick that, it's okay to let them sleep in a little bit because once they're good and awake, and we do a little movement first thing in the morning, I can get a lot of work out of them in relationship to their school from 9:30 through lunchtime. When I wake them up at 8 in the morning, there's a lot of fussing and fighting and those types of things. So it's okay. We can have some grace with each other at this point. But I know that their effective hours this week have been about 9 to 12:30. And they can get their schoolwork done in that time. And I can get my work done because I'm most effective first thing in the morning. And then I have another little bump last thing in the evening. So pay attention to your energy level, schedule things when it's appropriate. Some of you are dealing with really small children, and this might be even more difficult. So you may have to get creative, take turns. If you've got a helper in the house with you, take turns taking care of the kids so that you can get some things done, or perhaps, schedule now you can get some, or what? It's okay to show a movie every now and then. Have some grace for yourself and for your kids and go ahead and be creative with those types of things. But schedule your time appropriately. Oh, and don't overschedule yourself. Again, have some grace. Give yourself some time to breathe. So the next strategy is to Delegate. And delegate is not easy for all of us, but this one is pretty fun right now. Most of us have a lot of extra unscheduled time because most of our scheduled activities have been canceled or drastically changed. So now's a great time to delegate. If I'm expected to work my regular 8 to 5 hours at home, but keep getting distracted by the laundry or the dishes or mowing the grass, then I'm not being very effective. And my kids are also home. And part of them learning how to grow up and be productive citizens is learning how to do things like wash the dishes and do the laundry and pick up things. And being able to delegate some of those tasks not only takes it off your plate, but it's also teaching them a valuable life skill. So I'd encourage you to delegate. This week we adopted a one chore every day policy in our house, and it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be anything monumental. One day it was just pick your junk up out of the kitchen. But it's immensely helpful to me to know that I don't have to run behind. We also have decided to share meal prep duties. So somebody will cook lunch or prepare lunch, and one of us will prepare dinner and plan all that out. And that's been very helpful over this week. So delegation can be your friend. So go ahead and do that. Even small ones can do some things. Strategy number 7 is stop procrastinating. Stop procrastinating. I'm saying that to myself as much as you, but putting things off certainly results in poor time management. Chronic procrastination is said to be a lifestyle of about 20% of people, but it has consequences, and we've talked about some of them. I mean, obviously, procrastination can have health consequences. Research shows us that procrastinators have more colds, more flu, more GI problems, and more insomnia. Procrastination can affect your relationships. Procrastinators shift duties off to other people, and that creates resentment. And again, in these times, we don't want to create resentment. We want to try to pull our own weight and stay healthy in our relationships and our physical bodies. Kids often struggle with procrastination. I know I've got one that's a huge procrastinator. And one of the ways that I try to help her is to help her break projects down into smaller, more manageable chunks, or start with any small task. I do what I like to call the Swiss cheese method, which is poking holes in the project by doing quick, easy tasks. Some people like to do the hardest part of the project first to get it out of the way. It's never been my style, if I'm being real honest, but it's a technique. Some folks like to set aside a designated amount of time, 30 minutes, to dive in and make yourself work on the project and then make yourself stop. Anyway, remove distractions. We've talked about some techniques for that. You might put in some white noise in your earbuds, schedule movie time for the kids, whatever it is that you can do, but stop procrastinating. Talk good about yourself when you get something done and celebrate your accomplishments. Strategy number 8 is to manage the time wasters. And this is probably the biggest struggle right now because there's so much competing for our time and attention. But identify what those time wasters are for you. Is it email, social media, the TV, your phone? Identify what those things are, and then take some strategies to avoid them. For your phone, turn off the notifications on your phone and use it as a phone. Close the social media tabs on your computer unless you're actively managing them for a work purpose. One strategy I like to use is call people just before lunch or just before the end of the day, and that keeps the conversation short. Same with any meetings that you have to schedule, just before lunch or just before the end of the day. Remove yourself, unsubscribe from mailing list, check your email at designated times. Again, taking turns managing the kids if you've got somebody there to help you. And again, I know everybody's situation is different, but think creatively about how you can manage those distractions. That preparation on the front end will really save you some time on the back end. Strategy number 9, this is a personal favorite, and it's so difficult right now. But avoid multitasking. If you're like me, it's like you want to check the numbers every 10 seconds almost. You want to see what's going on with this thing. You want to, figure out what's happening. But focusing results in so much greater productivity. Most of us think that we can do 2 or more things at once, but we can't. What we're really doing is switching very quickly between one thing and another. And that doesn't increase our productivity. It actually decreases it by about 40% because you have to spend so much time reorienting to each task every time you switch. And I know I noticed that big time for me this week. I felt like I started a whole lot of projects but didn't finish anything. Research on media and multitasking tells us a few key things. One, it tells us that the people who think they're the best at multitasking are probably the worst. It tells us that there might be our cognitive ability to really think deeply because we're not spending enough time devoted to a single task. We might lose the ability to filter and sort information and focus on important things. And we may lose the ability to properly store things into our working memory. And then over time, we become slower and less efficient at switching between one task and another. So again, find some ways to help you minimize multitasking, minimize interruptions, make notes for yourself to work on later, make a list, stand up periodically while you're working. That helps. Improve your concentration, and then set deadlines for yourself to work on a task until that particular deadline, and one task at a time. Again, if you've got comments, if you've got questions, throw them into the chat box. I'd love to interact with you. Last strategy, and then we're going to start to wrap this thing up, and I think it's one of the most important ones. It takes so important right now. We're socially distanced or we're physically distanced. Find a way to interact with folks socially, whether it's over Zoom or Google Chat or FaceTime or however you do it. We're broken up into 3 work groups here, and I miss my work family so much. It's very hard to be separated like that. And so finding some time to connect with each other is very, very important for your mental health. Exercise. I miss my exercise. I miss my workout partners, but still devote time to exercise. There are tons of apps out there offering free online exercise classes right now. I'd encourage you to find those and do some of those things. Eating healthy. We can't neglect our nutrition during this time, and taking opportunities for continuous learning like this. So what we're trying to do here at Live from Curry Tech Extension is we're trying to give you things that you can use to improve your situation. We want to teach you about how to start a vegetable garden so that you have long-term access to healthy foods. We want to teach you how to do STEM activities with your kids so that you have some outlets to do those types of things. We want to teach you things like this so that you can just manage your day-to-day a little bit better. So take advantage of these continuous learning opportunities, and they're all over the place right now. So I'd encourage you to do that. And then also I would encourage you to take time and relax and pursue your own interest. It's a great time. All your after work activities have been canceled. If you've always dreamed of picking up the guitar and trying to learn an instrument or something like that, now's a fantastic time to do it. So pursue your own interest and certainly maintain a positive outlook. Stay positive. We can do it. We're all in it together. It's fine. Give yourself some grace. There's some references if you want them. And then finally, probably the most difficult aspect of time management is holding yourself accountable for practicing the skills that you've learned. So I'd give you one question to ask yourself throughout your day over and over again. And that is, what is the best use of my time right now? Sometimes I do that. I'll get caught up looking at social media and I'll ask myself, what is the best use of my time right now? And then I have to throw that off to the side. So we're all in it together. We're all feeling the pain of it. And I hope I've given you some tips that'll help you get through it and make things just a little bit easier. So that's pretty much it for today's episode of Live from Curry Tech Extension. Again, if you have questions, comments, tips you want to share, post them in the chat box. If you want to get up with us later, our contact information is in the description. Also in that description is a link to an evaluation. And it's just a real short, maybe 5-question evaluation. And then it asks for your suggestions on some of the future classes. If you would, just take a minute and fill that out for us. It's really going to help us develop some programming that you need and that you find helpful. So I would ask that you do that if you have a chance. Make sure you tune in on Monday at 11:30. We'll be right here on YouTube Live. And Monday, Stephanie Minton, our 4-H program assistant, will be teaching us how to build a brooder box. We've got some chicks in an incubator here. They're going to be hatching soon, so we're going to be learning how to build that brooder box so we're ready for our chick hatch. So join us on Monday at 11:30 right here, and you guys stay positive out there. That's it.